Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.
So is it compensation or charity? Paralyzed by toxic leadership and mired in billions of rands worth of irregularities, the Road Accident Fund is frankly broke. It owes a staggering 500 billion rand, a figure that could grow in light of allegations it allegedly tried to bury 230 billion rand more in valid claims. The fund regularly refused to pay claims, making the submission process so onerous and difficult and punitive, and even cooked the books to serve a putrid dish. So as Scopa tries to uncover the rot, what of those who are still owed money? Joining us now is Gert Nel, who is a legal advisor for the Association of the Protection of Road Accident Victims. Gert, a very good morning to you, and thank you for your time, and welcome to 7 Energy Breakfast.
It's a pleasure, Bongani. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk with that figure. 500 billion rand. That's an extraordinary amount. How did RAF get there?
Well, by doing fancy footwork in terms of their accounting standards, they essentially changed themselves overnight from a social insurance scheme to a social benefit scheme. And subject to a social benefit scheme, they only recognize claims that have got offers on them. So essentially, they took about 2/3 of their contingent liability overnight off their books, reducing their liabilities on paper from 340 billion and as at 31 March 2021 to 30 billion. So that's essentially what they did. They basically took off a contingent liability subject to a accounting standard which doesn't apply to the road accident fund structure.
Can they do that?
No, well, various courts have ruled that it is unlawful, and the ASB and the Auditor General are currently still in litigation with the Road Accident Fund concerning that, which is quite distressful, as you know, the Minister has already a year ago instructed the Road Accident Fund to return to the original or the generally accepted accounting standard. But as we speak, it's still in play, and we haven't seen anything from the Minister's office or the Road Accident Fund to indicate that they are going to change back to the accounting standard that they should use.
So what does that mean for legitimate claims that may now have been erased or blocked or remain unpaid?
You know, the interesting thing, Bongani, is this whole operational change that the Road Accident Fund introduced was a carefully planned process to reduce the amount of claims and also to reduce the amount of settlements and to keep claims that are in the system in transit. In other words, to keep the settlement of these claims ongoing as long as possible. So essentially what the Road Accident Fund did is to introduce a board notice, which is also an unlawful document, in which they basically made it almost impossible for victims to claim from the Road Accident Fund due to additional requirements that they needed to comply with. So they essentially reduced the amount of claims by almost 60% from 2020 to 2024, and also reduced the amount of payments almost by the same token. So essentially what they are doing is they are ignoring claims that are validly lodged with the Road Accident Fund. And we've determined or estimated that figure is about almost 100,000 per year since 2020 that the Road Accident Fund hasn't recognized on their books. And that's where this 500 billion that you're talking about comes from. That's topped on top of the 330 billion that they ignored in 2021. They simply are taking the ostrich stance, putting their heads in the ground, and they're ignoring claims that have been lodged in terms of the Act, which have court orders on them, and they simply, to this day, refuse to pay them. And you know, that's why we hear these sad stories about victims that has been in the process for 2, 3, 5, 7 years, not getting paid because the Road Accident Fund simply ignores those claims as if they don't exist. But it's out there. It's like this phantom parallel system that the Road Accident Fund created for themselves, thinking that nobody is going to pick up on that. And thankfully, SCOPA and the chair and the committee is doing sterling work in uncovering this type of thing that the Road Accident Fund has subjected the South African public and victims to.
Gert, I must ask you, is there money in the kitty though, if not at least for the liabilities, but for the claims that have been made, or is part of what one can read about government's approach, as you said, not much from the minister since, is it partly because this now exposes the fiscus to major risk?
Bongani, I think the listeners must accept that the Road Accident Fund has never been solvent. I mean, that is a fact. Since the 90s, I worked at the Road Accident for myself in the 90s, and the Road Accident Fund has been insolvent, and it will always be, because it's an actuarial approach. The fund will never be able to pay all its claims on one day. I mean, we have to accept that. But running off payments, the Road Accident Fund is earning about 4 billion per month via the fuel levy, and we are of the opinion that with structured and plausible changes to the Road Accident Fund structure, the Road Accident Fund can get to a point where they are able to pay all the claims that they should pay on a single day. For instance, the claims of court orders on them, if they make the necessary operational changes to the fund, that can be done.
What happens? 4 billion a month. What happens to it?
Well, I must tell you, Bongani, one good thing is since the new interim board has been appointed, we must say that the board has made efforts to ensure that those payments, as is, go back to the victims. And I must say, it's the first time, and it's so refreshing in about 5 years that the Road Accident Fund has actually made an effort to ensure that everything they earn goes back to the victims, as opposed to what we hear on a weekly basis from the Road Accident Fund that has been happening over the past 5 years, that absolutely nothing or very little has gone to the victims, and the rest has gone to parties and all sorts of other interesting stuff that we learn about in SCOPA, as the witnesses testify.
All right, Gert Nel, I appreciate your time. Legal advisor for the Association of the Protection of Road Accident Victims there on the line. Can you imagine you've lost perhaps life and limb? Maybe you have been affected really badly. You've lost loved ones. Money is tight. Breadwinners are gone. And these guys are having parties. They're having parties. And the money, you are told, isn't there? Goodness me.
702.
Coming up, the big interview.
The Trump White House accused South Africa of a white genocide, and now Donald Trump is warning Nigeria about a Christian genocide. In fact, even threatening to invade the country. What does this all mean? Up next.
Current events. Developing stories.
Tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.